You stand beneath the burning sun, watching the Nile swell with its ancient rhythm. But the crowd isn't gathered for the water. All eyes fix on the pharaoh, naked from the waist down, arms raised, whispering sacred words. Then, before priests and nobles, he does something unthinkable. He begins to pleasure himself, not in shame, but in ceremony. This is not madness, it is salvation. His seed, when spilled into the sacred river, will command the gods to flood the land with life. And if he fails, Egypt starves. Subscribe if you dare to see the world as the ancients did. Comment where you're watching from. Now, let's begin. Ancient Egypt was never just a civilization of tombs and gold. It was a world where the human body was not hidden, but worshipped, where sexuality was not a secret, but a sacred force. Forget what you think you know, because this isn't history for the faint-hearted. This is truth that was carved into temple walls. It all begins at the moment of creation. According to the most sacred Egyptian myth, the world was not born from war or chaos, but from desire, from one God, alone. Atom, the self-created one, rose from the waters of nothingness and gave birth to the cosmos. Not through battle, but through an act of solitary pleasure. His orgasm unleashed the first gods, Shu, the air, and Tefnut, the moisture. They, in turn, gave life to everything else. But this wasn't just a myth, it was a ritual reenacted year after year by Egypt's most powerful man, the living pharaoh. When the Nile prepared to flood, bringing vital silt to Egypt's parched soil, the king was expected to repeat the act, publicly, before the river. With the weight of the nation on his shoulders and in his hands, his ejaculation was not private, it was divine magic, calling the gods to flood just enough, not too much, not too little. The difference meant feast or famine. Inscriptions from Karnak and Luxor describe these ceremonies with chilling detail. Sacred rooms were built for this purpose alone, their walls etched with spells meant to empower the pharaoh's body. Foreigners like Herodotus watched, stunned, as Egypt's ruler performed this intimate duty before the gods. This was no kink. This was cosmic order. Because in Egypt, the pharaoh was not merely a man. He was the bridge between mortals and immortals. And in his body, especially that most private part, lived the balance of the universe. And if that balance broke, all would perish. But the body's power did not die with the king. No, in Egypt even death could not silence desire. In the eternal twilight of the tomb, the body was prepared, not just for survival, but for pleasure. To the Egyptians, the afterlife was not a solemn realm of clouds and silence. It was the field of reeds, a sensual paradise where hunger vanished, wine flowed, and sex was not only possible but promised. To get there, your body needed to be perfect and complete. That's why the story of Osiris mattered so much. Osiris, the god of the dead, had once ruled the living. But his jealous brother, Seth, murdered and dismembered him, scattering his body across the land. His devoted wife, Isis, found and reassembled every piece, except one, his penis. And so she crafted a magical replacement. With it, she brought Osiris back to life, just long enough to conceive their son, Horus. This myth wasn't symbolic. It was a blueprint. Every mummified corpse was prepared with the same belief. That resurrection was only possible if the body, including the sexual organs, was whole. CT scans of royal mummies have revealed artificial penises made of gold or resin, carefully affixed to the body. Some queens were buried with molded vulvas, shaped by hand, secured with wax. In the Valley of the Kings, paintings show the dead making love in the afterlife. The Turin erotic papyrus, never shown in tourist brochures, depicts scenes of passion that rival the Kama Sutra, drawn not as fantasy, but as expectation. Even the opening of the mouth ceremony, performed on the dead, was filled with sexual symbolism. Priests would touch the corpse's lips, nose, and, yes, genitals, believing these parts needed to be awakened, to speak, to breathe, to love again. This wasn't morbid, this was hope, because to die without pleasure was to never live again. Sex wasn't shameful, It was sacred, eternal, and yet this reverence came with its own dark shadow. For if life demanded sexual power, so did death, and not all who touched the dead did so with purity in their hearts. Herodotus, the Greek traveler, recorded a chilling detail during his journey through Egypt. When beautiful women died, he wrote, their bodies were not embalmed right away. They were hidden for 3 days. Why? Because embalmers, priests of the dead, had sometimes violated the corpses. Necrophilia. In the land of sacred sexuality. It sounds like a slander, a foreigner's exaggeration. But Egyptian texts whisper something eerily similar. In the negative confessions, a list of sins the deceased must deny in order to reach paradise, one line stands out like a dagger in the dark. I have not had intercourse with a corpse. Why include such a taboo unless it had been broken? The embalming chambers, Per Nefer, the house of beauty, were meant to be sanctuaries. Yet the Egyptian obsession with preserving beauty may have tempted those who worked too long among the dead, especially those whose role was to clean, anoint, and handle the body in total secrecy. The 3-day delay wasn't just tradition, it was precaution. Because in Egypt, the body was more than a vessel. It was a divine replica of the gods themselves. Violating it was not only a crime against the dead, it was blasphemy. And yet, even these measures may not have been enough. Priests of Anubis were sworn to purity, but purity and temptation often sleep side by side. This uncomfortable truth reveals the dual edge of Egyptian belief. While they celebrated sex as a life-giving force, they also feared its misuse, its power to corrupt, to desecrate, to doom a soul for eternity. And what of the living? If even the dead required protection from desire, what rules were placed upon the throne, upon the pharaoh's own flesh and blood? That answer lies in the twisted vines of Egypt's royal family tree, where incest was not scandal, but tradition. In the palaces of ancient Egypt, love did not blossom between strangers. It curled around blood. Pharaohs married their sisters, not in secret, but in state ceremonies. It wasn't perversion, it was policy. To rule Egypt was to carry divine blood. And divine blood must not be diluted. Just as the gods Osiris and Isis had wed, so too did human royals. Brother to sister, father to daughter, sometimes even son to mother. Cleopatra, before her affairs with Caesar and Antony, was first married to her younger brother, then another, their parents, also siblings. And the line went back for centuries. It wasn't love, it was control. By marrying his sister, a pharaoh kept power from spreading to rival families. There would be no in-laws, no second claims to the throne, only the pure blood of Ra, of Horus, of divine lineage, recycled through generations. But the body, even sacred, has limits. Tutankhamun, the boy king buried in gold, was the son of a brother and sister. His body, once unwrapped by modern scans, showed the toll of this purity. Clubfoot, a cleft palate, a fragile frame twisted by inbreeding. He died young, others fared worse. Records from the late Ptolemaic dynasty describe kings with vacant stares, erratic rages, and misshapen skulls. These were not artistic flourishes. Coins from the era show pharaohs with bulging eyes, elongated jaws, features embraced, not hidden. Symbols, they claimed, of divine uniqueness, but the truth was genetic decay. Egypt had turned its gods into laws, its myths into medicine, its rituals into rules. And over time those rules began to rot the very foundation of their greatness. The same sex that birthed a universe began to bury it. When Rome finally conquered Egypt, it ended not only an empire, but a philosophy, one where sexuality was ritual, power, divinity, danger. And yet, what remains today? Golden statues carved in arousal, erotic papyri locked behind museum vaults, temples where gods still stand tall, proud, and strangely human. The ancient Egyptians saw something most of us now ignore, that the body, its desires, its powers, its mysteries, is never just flesh. It is myth. It is meaning. And in the end, It is what remains long after we are gone.